Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Retained Recruiter Show. My name is James.
And I'm Jo Gregory. Thanks very much for meeting us, everybody, today, again, on what is in the UK a very wet day. But hopefully we'll bring a bit of sunshine into people's lives for the next 30 minutes, James.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, let's see what we can do today to get on with that, Jo. So, yeah, listen, by the way, before I get you to introduce today's show, Jo, there's people have asked us, how can we get some information on some of the things we want to do? So we can just sort of direct you to www.retainedroadmap.com. Look at that, Jo. You pulled your finger out perfectly. That was really good. We almost were professional. What's happening to us? So yeah, download the roadmap there. It's totally free of charge, and hopefully give you some ideas, hints and tips on some of the things that you can do that we're going to share with you. But Jo, what are we going to cover on today's show? I know we're excited about it.
We are. So we talked about this last week, and we alluded to the 5 stages of pitching a really good recruitment retainer. So we're going to talk you through the 5 stages, how to get a really good head start, that adds impact to the meeting. Then we're going to talk about the ways to actually qualify your prospects, so you're spending less time with the wrong people. But also how to elicit those pain points. Some really, really important pieces there. Before then, of course, shift into the final piece, which is the value proposition framework that you need to win approximately, statistically speaking, about 90% of your meetings, how to actually present your service and then close. So the 5 stages of the meeting, James, today.
Excellent. Sounds good. So where shall we start?
So I think the best place to start is by actually talking about, should we be doing client meetings? I'm not completely convinced in a transactional world us as recruiters are even doing client meetings anymore. I think it's got easier because we're now on Zoom. You can just have a quick Zoom meeting with a client. But I more and more frequently am seeing recruiters trying to close for jobs in sales calls with clients rather than putting this extra stage in, which I think, slow down to speed up. If you want to create really good relationships and close better further down the line, this client meeting is important, isn't it, James?
Yeah, and it's always one of those things. I think the importance of client meetings shouldn't be underestimated, and just not enough of them take place in reality. We know it's difficult. Getting a client meeting is difficult. Now, the good news is Zoom has facilitated that, because as long as you can get the client a face-to-face meeting, it's always better. There's a bit of body language things that you can get when you are sort of face-to-face. But no, it shouldn't be underestimated how important it is. And Jo, I think that phrase, slow down to speed up, it's something we also need to inject into the client conversation, because sometimes what they see as steps, they can see as those are delaying steps, but in the end, it's ultimately about trying to speed up the process for them so that they actually make the right hire. And our whole focus here is, how can we help the client make the right hiring decision? And to do that, you have to gather information. And I know it's one of those things that people say, oh yeah, I do that, I qualify the client. And that's what we're talking about today. I want to give you some proper structure on how to do this, because
I'm not sure if that's happened to everybody or whether it's just me. I think James is frozen. You may be coming back. You ever notice you never freeze in an attractive position? Let's all just take a moment now to...
I'm back. Are you back?
You are back. Your face isn't back. No, your face is catching up with your voice now. It's a sign of old age, I think, James.
Okay, what I was saying is that, slowing down to speed up, it's really important that we don't rush to tell. Because in my experience, a lot of people, they get the client meeting and they just want to sort of tell the client how amazing they are, how brilliant they are, and they haven't really taken the time to show they're interested in what the client's got to say. And how can you sell something if you don't know what the problem is? And as we say sometimes, Jo, the difference is, you're not a waiter taking orders. You're not walking in and saying, so tell me what type of person you're looking for. Great, 5 years experience, work for one of the main competitors, paying X £1,000 or dollars in salary. Great, I'll find you somebody. Now our job is to develop the relationship in the same way that a doctor develops a relationship with a patient, by asking lots of questions. But we'll come back to that, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk about the 5 stages of pitching a recruitment retainer. And this is obviously all in a meeting, be it face-to-face or Zoom. So the first 2 stages, you can kind of put them together, really, because it's first impressions and building rapport. First impressions count. We like to think we don't judge books by their covers, but we do. And people like themselves. It's actually been researched and proven that if you can build a relationship, build some rapport, find commonalities and common ground with somebody before entering into a negotiation situation, you're more chances that you're going to come out with a more favorable end result. So this first part of the meeting could be 35 seconds, could be 15 minutes. We normally say leave a good 5 to 15 minutes for this first portion. It's about building rapport, isn't it, James? Building rapport, making the right first impression. And that isn't, as you said before, that's not telling the client all about you and how great you are. It's not selling your service. It's not trying to shove features of your service down their throat. It's about starting the conversation in the best possible way. One of the things that we do say before any of this, by the way, which does help with this part and also helps you to move from stages 1 through 5. It's about setting the agenda beforehand, isn't it, James? How critical it is to send the agenda beforehand, but also have a copy with you so that you look like you mean business. It sets the tone and it helps you to stay on track. So this first piece of the agenda could be about you, about the business. And that's a great place to start a conversation.
Yeah. Joe, I think there's 2 or 3 things I want to pick up on there. So bear with me whilst I jump on my soapbox. So a couple of things. So I think, first of all, the point you make about agenda is really critical about attending a meeting. And people, it's not just about winging it. It's about being prepared and showing the client that you're prepared. So an agenda, if you want 3 topic points, write these down. I'm going to give them to you. They're basic. I'm sure you can do better than this. But bullet point number 1 would be your current recruitment process. Bullet point number 2 might be our recruitment process, as in your recruitment process. And bullet point number 3 might be next steps and further actions. So it can be as simple as that. But if you send it in advance, it actually positions you quite well. And that leads nicely into the first stage of meeting, Joe, which is first impressions. And as I said, in terms of, don't judge a book by its cover. But in this day and age, there's a lot more of this going on. So the first impressions, we used to think of this as like when you turn up, do you turn up to a meeting on time? Do you look the part? Whatever that means nowadays. But actually, it's a bit deeper than that nowadays because people check you out. Think about it. We're getting towards the summer holidays and people, if you haven't already booked, you're thinking about booking your holidays, you go onto a website, be it TripAdvisor or Google Flights or something like that, and you look at where you're heading. And what do? You go and look at the website. You go onto the website, you review it, you look at it. So your prospects are looking at your website. Your prospects are looking at your LinkedIn profile, your social footprint. And what they're trying to see is, are you someone like me? Are you somebody I want to associate with? Is your messaging on your website, is it talking about how you help, or is it talking about you? Is it talking about the things that are important to me? Are you talking the right language? Are you in the right niche? Do you look like an authority in your place? What things do you post? Is it all rubbish stuff, or is it all things which are helping clients and candidates make more informed decisions? So that first impressions, it now takes place before the meeting. And so first impressions of the meeting is fairly superficial, as you say, Joe. And then you come to the rapport and people buy from people they like. There's so many, a lot of things I was talking to someone today, although the UK is a small country, in terms of that, there are 30,000 plus recruiters in the business. So clients or prospects have a lot of choice. We're well connected, but they have a lot of choice. So they don't like you, they don't need to buy from you. So humanize it. I think that's the thing. Humanize that relationship. When you go in, make sure that give yourself a chance of actually it being somebody who might have the chance to like you. So those first 2 sections of this 5 stages, Joe, I think it said, can be relatively quick. You said 35 seconds. That's probably a bit too quick, but it's all sort of coming from there. So have we got any questions that have come in so far, Joe?
Yeah, so Palix asked a question. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. What happens, this is interesting actually. So what happens if the client wants to get right down to business, just asks me what I'm about? Do I redirect or go ahead and give them my pitch as requested? Part of the research that you do before any meeting, I think, is really thinking about the type of person that you're going to be meeting with, thinking about their character and whether you think that this is going to come up. Some people who you meet are very direct, they're very bold, they want to take control of the meeting, they want to know about you. Now, it might be they want to know all about you because they know what problems they want solving and they want you to tell them what you do to get to that stage. You still have to control the meeting. The person asking the questions is always the one in control of any meeting. Now, if you've sent an agenda, the agenda point should be, as James just said, your recruitment process. 3 topics of discussion, Palak. Firstly, your recruitment process. That you could even put a brief description in there. I'd like to ask you a series of questions to find out a bit more about your business, your recruitment process. And then secondly, our recruitment process. So I do think that if a client says, okay, so tell me a bit about what you do, you could say, okay, well, look, here's a little bit of information about what we do. What I'd really like to do and what I'm most interested in is to find out about you and your business and how we can help you to save time and money on your next recruitment campaign. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to need to ask you a few questions. Are we all right if we start talking about telling me about your recruitment process at this point? So I think you can kind of use a throw it back technique, tell them a little bit and then go back to asking the questions. So I think prevention rather than cure, to try and stop that from happening. Make sure that the agenda very, very clearly sets out that that's what you're going to do. I also sometimes think that we maybe back ourselves into a cul-de-sac by talking about sales pitches. I wouldn't call this a sales meeting. I'd call it a client consultation or a recruitment process diagnostic. What it does is it gives the impression that you're going to ask a lot of questions rather than just come and sell something or do a presentation. The presentation and the sell will come later, but it's consultations, qualify first, sell second. So I think the way that you position this ahead of the meeting should help to maybe reduce some of those chances. We've got another question there from Shaz, James. So what sales pitch example would you use to start a conversation with a recruitment agency if you are a job board? We might need to take that offline because I'm not sure we're a job board. I don't think we need that hat as well as all the other hats, do we, James?
Start a conversation with recruiters if you're a job board. Yeah, I think we need to take that offline, jokes. It's not really what we're about.
Yeah, but I'll message you, Shaz, because I need to message you back anyway.
I think the other question that came in, I think that it is difficult sometimes when the client is that direct, and sometimes you'll say, "Is this a client I want to work with as well?" Because if they, sometimes when they're doing that, it's because they just, they might be screening people to see if you can get on the PSL, who will work the cheapest and fastest. And we're not really about that. There's a clue in the name of the show. It's a Retained Recruiter show. And this is all about consultative selling. And when you get clients like that, you've got to say, are they right? But I think you've got, as Joe, you mentioned correctly, it's all about how you control the conversation from that side. And it's about, like, I think what you said is the best one. Give them a little bit, but come back and ask that and say it's about understanding what you're about. And the other thing, psychologically, you need to understand that if you've and this is why meetings are difficult to get. If a client has agreed to meet up with you, something you've done or said, either in your communications, verbal, written, or whatever they may be, has made the client think, you know what, you must be interesting. You've got something that I'm prepared to look at, because no employer wakes up today and thinks, the best thing I can do today is meet up with another 5 recruiters. They don't think that way. So the reality is something you've done has got you across the threshold. And so now you need to put yourself in and say, okay, how can I come into this at peer level rather than client servant level? It's about understanding that, when you're in the room, if Joe is the client and I'm the recruiter, one of us has got a problem. It's not me, it's Joe. She's agreed to meet me because something is not right in her current recruitment process. Something she's not happy about. Could be price, could be service. You've got to find those things out. And if Joe comes at me straight away and says, okay, tell me what you do and tell me how much you charge, I say, well, listen, I'm going to get to that. But in order for me to sort of, share with you what I do and how I do it, I need to understand a bit more about you. You've got to deflect it a little bit and push it back. And coming back to the agenda. So if I just want to go back to my agenda point, what I need to understand is, how do you currently recruit? What's your current recruitment process? What's it entail? What do you like? What don't you like? Or you can start to grow those questions out. How's your business changed over the last 5 to 10 years? A little or a lot? How's your recruitment process changed? Hardly at all. Strange. We can come into some of these questions to open up the conversation, to show the client that you're there not to be looked down upon, but to share, because you've got the problem. I have a solution that fits yours. It might not do, but at the end of the day, because again, coming back to what this show is called, the Retained Recruiter Show, our job here is to say, okay, I don't work with tens of clients in a month. As a consultative recruiter, I work with 1, maybe 2 new clients per month. I hope, Joe, this month it'll be you. If not, I'm okay with that. I'm going to share with you what I do. But this is not a subservient role. Your job here is to consult with the client, show them how knowledgeable and informative you are, and get that across to them. So you've got to go, and that's why we have a process. That's why we have this 5-stage process. But I say it starts with the agenda. That is a controlling point, and control is the key. So yeah, great.
Absolutely. So we've got, send the agenda in advance, do your research. Your research is going to really help you to have some particular questions that you might want to ask during the first impressions and the rapport building stage. These can be, they're situational based questions. So they're easy to ask, they're easy to answer, and they're typically about the business. So know a bit and then ask a bit more. So I can see you've been going for 15 years. I can see you've recently changed over to this particular type of project. Tell me a little bit more about that. So it's questions about the business. This is going to help you to qualify the client as well as fact find. And also it eases you into the conversation. Everyone's favorite subject is themselves, be that professionally or personally. This point in time, I think it's going to be professionally. Now, the whole rapport building, first impressions of rapport building then takes you into stage 3. Stage 3 is then the qualification of the client. Now, we do this for 3 reasons, really. Firstly, the person, are asking a lot of questions to qualify the client now. Firstly, we want to know if this is someone that we think we can help. Secondly, we need to know how we think we're going to be able to help them. So it's about fact finding, problem finding, pain point elicitation, which James will talk you through in a second. But also these questions, as we've just said, the person asking the question is the one in control. Everyone's favorite subject is themselves. This isn't, don't sell too soon. So this is about us asking a series of questions. This is almost, if it was a meal, this would be the main course, really. So we're going to go to town. You want to prepare a series of questions in advance. They don't all want to be about a vacancy. This isn't just about a vacancy. This is about how they do their job and how we can help them to do it better. So prepare a series of questions in advance. Start easy, start soft. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your team. Tell me about how you recruit your team in the first place. Tell me about your history of recruitment, your future. How are you doing it currently? What do you like? Challenges. Then you can start to get into some of these pain point questions, James. So what do we mean by pain point questions? Why do we need to make these hurt a little bit?
Well, the only way you can actually show somebody you've got a solution is if they understand that there's a problem. And so the pain points are about helping the client understand what the problem is. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be, poke them in the eye with it. Sometimes it's softer. I think you got a really nice expression, Joe. It's about rubbing a bruise. I think that's the expression you say.
It is, yeah. So that if the problem is the bruise, someone talks you through a bruise, they go, yeah, it's a bruise. It's just, you do this with your head, don't you? It's like when you say, how many CVs do you get per vacancy? And they go, we see about 25, and then they're not all right. What you need to do is you need to stick your finger in it. Sticking your finger in it is eliciting the pain, poking it and making it hurt, because emotion produces motion.
Yeah, a nice little phrase for you to all remember. One of the important things about this stage of the meeting, and it's the area where people make mistakes, is qualification is all about asking questions, not about giving answers. Mm-hmm. Your job here is to elicit, as Joe said, elicit information that you can then use later on when you present. Now, there's a skill in this, of course. You've got to be practiced. The questions that Joe just reeled off her tongue in about 30 seconds. You've got to think of all the questions you can ask about the company to show that you're interested, to find that out. And you're going to drop in some pain point questions. And some of them are quite subtle and quite soft. Now, for example, and again, I'm going to talk, unashamedly plug our intro here. The fact is we use multiple layers of scientific and objective assessment. So we gather lots of information to present to a client. What do most transactional recruiters do? They present CVs. So I say, you ask them, what do you typically receive from a recruiter when you've asked them to hire for you? And the answer is going to be CVs. And that's okay. So I've gathered that information. Why is that important to me? Well, I'm going to prove to the client later on that by just getting one level of information, it's not enough to make a long-term decision. And I'm going to show them later on when I come to my presentation. That's the giveaway for section number 4. Giveaway number 4 to get to the presentation. I'm actually going to say to them, what you told me is that what you typically receive from recruiters when you're hiring is a CV. What I'm going to share with you is how we present a candidate to you. It's not just about CV, it's about these multiple data points, so you can make a more informed hiring decision, which leads to longer term success. It's how I'm going to demonstrate to you when I talk about, and come back to a pain point, how our retention levels are far better. So let's come back to qualification, other questions to point in. Find out what the problems are. So sometimes we'll say to clients, what's my role in this relationship that I hope we develop? And a lot of times, Joe, clients will say to you, well, your job is to find me candidates I can hire from. Okay, and what's your job? Well, my job's to hire people that you put in front of me. Okay, so if I find you candidates that you interview and can potentially hire, have I done my job? Yeah, sort of. So your job's to engage those people. Yeah. Okay. So if I find you somebody and leave after 3 or 4 months, is that okay? And of course, the answer is, well, no, not really. Why not? Well, because I don't think you've done your job right. You haven't found people who can stick with me long term. Okay, so find somebody who stays with you 7-8 months. How would you feel? Well, again, same type of problem. Not really enough. So actually, let's change this. My job isn't to transact with you and find you a bunch of CVs that you can hopefully hire somebody you want to, because if they leave in the short term, that's going to be a problem for you, isn't it? Yeah. So let's rephrase this. My job is to find somebody who you can employ, who stays with you for the medium to long term, to make the difference in your organization that you just spoke about. And again, if you go back and listen to any of these retained recruiter shows, go back and listen to David Perry, where he talks about how you're gathering this all information to show the client where the value is in what this person's going to bring to the organization. So it's important they stay for the medium to long term, because that's where the value is generated. And it'll help you justify your fees later on. So you're starting to ask questions which are probing in a little bit more detail to help the client understand, yeah, you know what? I do waste a lot of time hiring the wrong people. I do waste a lot of time interviewing the wrong people. So how can you help me not just interview somebody who's got a great CV or great resume for listening from other parts of the world? And the answer is to not base it around the CV. That's a one-dimensional recruitment approach. And we're talking about multi-dimensional recruitment approach. Recruitment should be in the 21st century, but it's stuck, Joe, in the 20th century. Recruitment process is about take a job spec as quick as you can, go and search your database as quick as you can, send the CVs over as quick as you can, and hopefully arrange some interviews and send them in 5 stages. I was talking to somebody and they said they've mapped out their process 26 stages. I said, that's what you see. The client only sees 4 or 5 because you haven't developed your process. So our job here is to elicit information and help the client understand that, the problems are going to come in either one of 3 areas. It's going to be time, people, or money. Yeah, those are the three things that we talk about. And we talk about 3 pivot points, Joe, that we build our conversations around. But it's helping clients understand some of those pieces.
Yeah, I like Chuck's question, actually. I think that when you're talking about these pain points and asking these questions, so Chuck's saying that I find certain industries are more resistant to retainers, i.e. high tech is resistant, whereas industrial B2B are far more willing to pay a retainer. Do you agree? I've yet to find a recruiter that doesn't think that their industry is the hardest, but that's me being a cynic after training 6,000 of them. But I take your point, Chuck. What I do think that happens, I think sometimes if you think it's hard, it's going to be hard. But I do think sometimes that there are certain industries that are more conditioned to behaving in a transactional way than others. So take high tech, for example, hugely saturated, heavily competitive, not particularly retainer oriented. So your clients are very, very deeply ingrained in working in a very transactional way. They've never worked any other way. The thing about a retainer is you're trying to change the client's mindset from doing it the way that they're already doing it to moving into a new way of doing something. Now, if that is not their normal, then the change from normal comfort zone to where you want to take them is a much bigger departure than an industry where maybe retainers are slightly in their peripheral vision. So I think you're right. Sometimes it's harder to get them to see the light. You're trying to convert them, aren't you, really, into the new world, into a new way of working. And I think it can be really hard in a market where sometimes it's just hard to get a conversation going with these people. I think you've got to really work on your marketing collateral, really get out there. Pain point elicitation in your marketing collateral and your social media, I think, is key. Start making these clients feel slightly uncomfortable. What they thought was normal isn't actually the best possible way that it could be. The minute you start to find those little discomfort pieces, and the bad hire calculator can help with this, can't it, James?
Yeah.
Then you start to produce almost a discomfort that's going to motivate a conversation with you. Even once you've brought retainers on, sometimes clients they're so conditioned, deeply ingrained to working in a certain way. This is a very big transition for them to make. So yeah, I agree that it is harder, I think, in some industries. But everything we're talking about here is not really about just selling the retainer. It's about producing reasons why clients would want to work on a retained basis with you in the first place.
I think it's a great question, and thank Chuck for that question. And we'll have a look at some of the questions that come in as well. And I think some of those are there. But Joe, our role is to educate, in terms of educate employers. And from Chuck's point of view, I assume he works in the high tech industry, and I sort of do and have seen some of that. And I think what you're going to do then is challenge. Our job is to challenge, not just to go along with the flow and say, oh yeah, it's difficult. Our job is to challenge those employers. Say, how's that working out for you? What do you mean? Well, why are you talking to me? You would not be talking to me if everything was hunky-dory and everything was good, flow smoothly. So there's a reason why you're talking to me. It's because actually I've got something different to share with you. Because your current process, it can't be working as well as you want. Otherwise, you wouldn't be constantly chopping and changing, churning your recruiters because they're not getting them. What can I find different people to everybody else? Well, yes, I believe I can, of course, but it's a way I find people. It's the way I present people to you that's different. And you've got to take the conversation and challenge the client. So how do I do that? Again, it's part of the pain point elicitation. I'll say to the client, listen, tell me the last 10 people you've hired, how many made it to 1 year? And here's a great stat for everybody. Look it up if you don't believe me. Leadership IQ, a US-based piece of research, said that 46% of new employees fail in the first 18 months. 46% of people fail in the first 18 months. Now, what we typically see, this is slightly bit more UK-centric here, but 30 to 40%, sorry, that might be a bit high, 25 to 30% of new employees don't make it to the first year anniversary. So I challenge a client. So, hey, you're in a high-tech industry. You've got a 25% failure rate with your people. Yeah. If you had a 25% failure rate on your tech, how would that work out? Not very good. fix it, wouldn't you? I can help you fix it. That's where I'd go with that client. So that's where you've got a challenge. You can't just roll over here. So a tough one. Oh,
Yeah,
cost. We're going to
like
come to cost. So we'll come to that question that Matt's got as well. So Joe, we've just done number 3, paying elicitation, qualification. Really important to ask lots of questions, not to give answers. Now is not the time to pitch your presentation. That's when the next stage, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So the qualification stage, like we said before, that's the main course. So you want to ask lots of questions, identify problems and challenges that they've got with their existing recruitment process, harvest them, and then stick your finger in them and make them hurt. That's quite easy, asking them what the impact of that is, either on the business or the team or them individually. Now, once you've harvested quite a lot of those, you want to move to the next stage of this. So stage 4 of the meeting is then presentation. This is where you are going to present your service methodology, what you do, how you do it, why you're different, and what problems it solves. A great little exercise for people to do if you are slightly worried that you don't have solutions to clients' problems, or you don't even know what the problems are. Ask your existing clients, maybe they're not using you for all their recruitment. What problems, challenges do they have with the process, with how they select, how they retain staff? Because that's going to really help you to identify some of those common problems. Most clients have the same problems, common problems that clients have. Now, once you've done that, you can then put a presentation together. You can give them some collateral if you're in a meeting with them that helps to clearly state what it is that you do for a living, all the elements of your service, all the features of your service, and the solutions that they provide. So everything you do and the problems that it helps to solve and the pains that it helps to get rid of. And I mean, this is a 30-minute session, so we don't really have time to go into it in massive amounts of detail. I do a session on it further down the line, actually, James. So a game we play, if this is the problem, what is the solution? But when you're telling the client what it is you do for a living, so here's a little bit about what we do and how we've helped other clients in similar situations to you, and you're telling them what you do, how you do it, and the results that it has, you're highlighting very subtly the parts of your service that make the pain of their problems go away. What the client's doing is they're kind of checklisting their problems as you're going through. Oh, so if they do that, right, that would help to solve this. That would help to solve that. Now, this is really important. The more problems you find, the more solutions you can provide. The more pains you find, the more pleasures you're going to be able to provide. The whole point of this is when you came into the meeting and you were speaking to the client, you were down here and their current agencies and process was here. By qualifying the client, you have reduced their current agencies and their current recruitment process at 20% or whatever down to here. Now what you're doing with your presentation is you're showing your value proposition. You're giving your service methodology and your value proposition, and you're showing that you do this much more than you've just identified their current agencies and recruitment process is. And that's really important, isn't it, James? Because you've got to position this, because when you then come to stage 5, which is the close, where we're going to present fees, you need to look more expensive because you are. But that's the point, isn't it, James? You've got to look like you're doing more, not just asking for more money.
You do, and when you talk about, Joe, the value proposition, you do need that. So when you're sort of changing that dynamic in there, when you're coming to do your pitch, first of all, one of the things I'd say to people is just before you show your presentation or talk about that part, say to the client, what I'm about to share with you is what we do, and I want you to compare what we do with what you're currently used to, because that's helps the elevation as well. So from that side of thing, it comes through, and then you go through your presentation. But you've got to have a value proposition, and obviously that's one of the things we help people with at our intro. We actually give them a value proposition that is demonstrable, and then you come to the close. And when you come to the close, we talk about a 4-part close, Joe, don't we? Say, we get clients to say, okay, well, based on what we just shared with you, how does it compare? Is it better or worse? Now, and if you've done a bad job, they're going to say it's worse, in which case, game over. But hopefully you've done a great job and say, well, it's a lot better. So, okay, so is there any reason why you wouldn't work with me? Now, that's a closed question, because we're in a close. It's not an open question. I just say yes or no. Yeah, but how much is it going to cost? And you're going to come to that. Well, before I come to the cost, I need to share with you how we work. What's our process? We work on a retained basis. Do you understand what that means?
Which they might not, James, as well, mightn't they? It's a recruitery word.
Yeah. So in terms of that, you come to that, you tell them what a retained process is, which is we typically charge in thirds, and you might do different variants of that. Typically charge in thirds, equal thirds. So is that okay? Yes, I understand that. Now, if you've done that, again, we can't go through all the objections here, Joe. You're going to face those objections, but you need to handle them. And then you're going to come to the price. That's one of the questions by Jack. God, Jack, I haven't seen you for a long time. If you're the same Jack that I'm thinking of. But anyway, so you come to questions, how would you structure your fee? So first of all, you're going to say what to the clients. Now, what did David Perry say a couple of weeks ago? He said, what's the fee? Not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough, yeah.
You come to your fee, and if you're going to charge, 30% fees, you can say our standard fees are 30% of the. No, don't even like that. Don't use that word, James. Joe, don't let me use that one again. Our fees for this level of service are 34 is annual standard package. We charge those in equal thirds, 1/3 up front, 1/3 on shortlist, and 1/3 on completion, whatever that may be. So you will put into that. I'm just conscious of time, Joe. Just want to pick up on Matt's question. Matt, if it's a local deal, yes, you put it together. We do something along the lines of a managed service project. We put that together where you're positioning still as a retained service, and we've got some great ideas. Get in touch with us because I've got some really good ideas on how we can help you with that one as well.
Yeah, multiple vacancies. Absolutely. I think the idea about this is when you come to the close as well is keep it really flexible, but plan what are you going to ask for and what you're going to give them in return. And then if they ask you for a lower fee, you don't give them as much. The thing about what we do is we tend to say standard fee, like you said, which assumes that you're then going to go down a little bit, which we're not. Our fee is fixed because of the level of service that we provide. However, if you want a lower fee, as you lower the fee, you have to dial down your service provision as well. So that it's a risk reversal policy, isn't it, James? The more they pay, the more guarantees and the more assurances and the more service provision they get. And I think that's very important that they see what they're paying for as well, rather than it's just a figure that's plucked out the sky. But do prepare it. Do prepare what your negotiation toolkit's going to be as well. If they negotiate, you need to make sure you get something in return. Yeah,
but you got to have, like I say, you've got to plan that out. Here at iIntro, we talk about recruitment risk reversal policy because we talk about offering up to 12 months free replacement. Play with that. We've got a couple of levers we can use in the session. So listen, thank you very much for listening. We do hope you can come back and listen next week. Next week, I'm actually joined by Paul Hickey, who's the Managing Director of Grass Greener Group, and he's going to sort of share with you his journey on how he actually went from 100% contingent to 100% retained. That's not everybody's objective, of course, but it certainly is his, and what the catalyst was that made him want to do that. And I'm sure there are some of the catalysts out there some of the similar catalysts out there within your business that might make you think about, is there a different way of doing it? So please do join us next week. Really look forward to sharing it with you. Sorry about
a corker, that one, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, listen, so from the Retained Recruiter Show, thanks very much for listening. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me, and enjoy your week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.